Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the presentation. I should perhaps add, as sort of honest disclosure, I'm a theologian by training, but I think that most theologians in Denmark end up being priests, but I think both the church and I felt we needed some distance, so I ended up at the Faculty of Science for some reason. Okay, let's get started. I have about 22 minutes, and I have a very complicated argument to make, and this isn't changing. There. First disclaimer. I'm a bioethicist, and I have given up what I find to be a peculiar Swedish idea about ethics in academia, which is that it is neutral. That you sort of go and say, oh, you can think that and you can think that, but I think nothing. I do. I have a million opinions on a million stuff, and I take it into my research. So there will be a lot of normativity. I will not just describe things, I will actually judge them. I don't have any real answers or solutions, I'm very sorry, but I have some thoughts, I think at least, on where to look for them. But it's also to say that if there is a sort of distinction between academic philosophical inquiry and then existential longing as a human being, I probably cross it, and I apologize if you find that troublesome, but I have kept my job for 20 years, so I think to some extent it's okay. Because I find the most relevant task for anyone these days, and especially us who are hired by the public, to have time to actually think about what it's like to be a human being. We have to give some kind of answer to the question, how do you maintain your sanity while you're witnessing an ecocide? So that's the basic idea here. I'll very briefly, because I am in academia, spend some time on saying what we know, because I have to show you that we share knowledge, and I can't really go into all the details, but we need to do that. I also spent a short time telling you what it is we are doing and have been doing with this knowledge since 1972. Again, there's a million references I could throw at you. I'll just show you a few examples, and then I'll try to spend most of the time on where to go. But what we know is that climate change is here, it's going on, it's man-made. We've seen a lot of slides yesterday and today of sort of particular phenomena right now that can worry you. We just saw about the acidification of the oceans. Half of humanity is in the danger zone, says the UN Secretary General, whom I have a hard time sort of seeing as some sort of stoned eco-hippie, right? I actually think what he says should carry some weight. And in PNAS recently, a paper was published by M.Th. on the climate endgame, saying that it's time we begin looking at what will happen if temperature rises 3 to 4 degrees. Because it might not be likely, but it could happen. We are killing off the species of the planet. We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction, according to biology. We are losing species at the same rate as when the dinosaurs went extinct. Again, numbers can be discussed and so on, but the image of being in a mass extinction and being responsible for it, and then saying, oh yeah, but where should we go on holiday? It's amazing to me. So we live in the Anthropocene, concept that can mean a lot of things actually, but which I take to mean that we live in an age where human beings have the power to decide the future of all other living species on the planet. So this we know, right? This is sort of science, right? The question is then, what have we done with this knowledge? What do we do? Well, in 1972, in this country, in Stockholm, where I was yesterday, when I flew here, and the irony of this does not escape me, the Stockholm Declaration was made, the first international global agreement on the environment. The report of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, and the conference ended up in principles and sort of decisions and so on, and very beautiful words around how humanity should take care of the environment for the sake of humans. I've recently written a paper with Steffen Foss Hansen from the Danish Technical University and some other people on this declaration, what's in it, and what has happened with the goals that was in it. And that was actually rather saddening, because it turns out that all the ideas 50 years ago of what we need to do now didn't really come to anything. But we had the Brundtland Report in 1987, and sort of a common idea of what is a sustainable future, which is, very famously, a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Two very interesting things about this definition. One is that we obviously only have to concern ourselves with humans. It's anthropocentric, true and true. The rest of the universe is sort of a gray matter, a resource we can use, whereas humans are ethically important and we need to take care of them. The other very interesting thing is that they didn't really go into what is a need. And our culture is a culture that is an expert in finding new preferences and then coming up with an explanation for why they can be seen as needs, and needs you can't really postpone, right? I need to breathe. You can't take that away from me. I need a new car. I need a new iPhone. I need a new watch. I need a new dress. I need. So as long as we don't have a critical discussion of this need, we won't get anywhere, and we haven't gotten anywhere since the Brundtland Report. But we've made more beautiful words. We have the global sustainability goals. Very interesting philosophically to go into them and see how they sort of interact and where they sort of go against each other. But the gist of it is basically the same as the Stockholm Declaration and the Brundtland Report. Let's have some economic growth and solve the environmental problems, because then we can help humans. It is true and true anthropocentric. I've read through all the subpoints and the comments to the subpoints and the comments to the comments to the subpoints. There is nothing about taking care of this planet or any of its inhabitants besides humans that isn't, in the end, reason that we should do this to protect humans. Right? It's anthropocentric. Yep, sorry. And we had more beautiful words in 2015. There was a brief moment there where at least I had an idea that the adults had come. We had woken up. Somebody would take the problem. It didn't last long, but there was this sort of, it was like when Obama was selected. I also had sort of a couple of days where I was pretty positive. But what has come out of this conference is, again, words, 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 and no action. We are basically stuck in a new liberalistic, capitalistic, globalized culture that works under this motto. We buy shit we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And if you are unhappy, buy more stuff. This is Western culture. And then we talk and talk and talk to continue this culture. But basically we're stuck in what is called ecological modernization. What we have, the crisis of nature we face, is an unfortunate side effect of an otherwise unproblematic civilization, which can be righted by technological innovation, right? So buy more stuff and plant a tree. I went through 3 airports yesterday: Copenhagen, Stockholm, Umeå. I've never been in such environmentally friendly places, if I could believe the posters on the wall. Which is amazing, right? But we have become experts in lying to ourselves. This report came out a couple of days ago. Just another example. It was commissioned by Greenpeace, but done independently by researchers from Harvard University. And it basically demonstrates how the fossil fuel industry is greenwashing itself. You can find it yourself online, very interesting reading. But what it is just one example out of many of how we are greenwashing an unsustainable culture. And we keep doing it, and we keep pretending we believe it because it allows us, to some extent, to do what we did yesterday again tomorrow. So the Anthropocene has turned into this. And it's amazing to be in the country of Pippi Longstocking, who is not only a superhero, but also a super philosopher, and who is an ethicist, who very much along the lines of K.E. Løgstrup, the Danish theologian, has said that she who is very strong should also be very kind. And the Anthropocene means that we are the ones that are very strong, and this is how kindness is incarnated by us. So, where to go? Well, we ask questions, right? Like this conference, right? What do we do with this stuff? So we meet and we talk about ethics. And so far, ethics has delivered very little. I mean, do we really need to answer a question like, is it wrong to live a life of affluence if it hurts people who have almost nothing? I mean, do we really need to spend time answering that question? Isn't the answer obvious? Nonetheless, ethics has spent 50 years telling us, yes, it's wrong. We have gone, oh, okay, and then we've continued like yesterday. By problematizing things, and I really liked the talk yesterday by the bioethicist from Grenada, McPherson, is that right? But I was stunned by her answer when I asked her about if basically should bioethicists become climate activists, right, and join Extinction Rebellion and glue ourselves to airports. And her question was, ooh, I think we talk too much about individuals, and what about corporate responsibility? And I was sort of like, yes, but we can't continue this. No, it's not me, it's corporate responsibility, because the corporate organizations, they're doing one thing right now, and they're saying, oh, but consumers can just behave responsibly and be sustainable, and we'll do what they do. We're just passing along the buck right now, right? Instead of saying both parties need to do action, right? How many in this room eat animal products? Sorry to ask. If you find it a very personal question, don't answer. But if you feel so, I can share that with the universe. Do you eat animal products? Yes. That is the single easiest thing where you can have a personal impact on the situation, right? Because it doesn't require you to stop transporting yourself around the globe. If you live in a country like Sweden or Norway or even Iceland or the Faroe Islands or Denmark, it is very easy to obtain a healthy, full human diet that doesn't consist of animal products, right? And we do know that that is the easiest thing you as an individual can do to mitigate climate change. And we are not doing it. Not even in a room full of people who have come to an ethics conference, right? Okay, but this is a conference on health, and I thought I would look into mental health risk. Obviously, there are both physical and mental health risk, but mental health risk for younger generations, you that work in universities and teach stuff like this, I guess you have the same experience as me. You meet a lot of young people who are extremely worried, and some of them even become depressed, right? So what do we do with the desperation of the young generation, with the Greta Thunbergs of this world? Well, we can ignore them or just yell at them, which is sort of obviously a preferable way of doing it. Or we can lie to them and tell them, well, there is a monster under the bed. You're right, climate change is real, but it's not a real monster. It's just a dust bunny. It's a dammråtta, as I learned in Swedish, right? And the grown-ups are in control, which is obviously a lie if you look at what we know and what we have done, right? Or we can try to find ways to find hope in what is a hopeless situation. And that's where my work is right now. And I think a way forward could be a shift in how we view nature. Because that's a chance that we can move the motivation of climate change from what we see as a sacrifice of our wonderful lives, that we have to sacrifice and live in cages and eat chickpeas all the time, which is a sacrifice, but morally we ought to bear it. We can agree on that. But most of us have spine like cocoa milk, so we don't do it, right? But perhaps we could change what is seen as a sacrifice into an opportunity that people would actually like to try. And that would mean that we would be taking care of what we can call a modern human community, with the words of David Abram. Hursthouse, New Zealand philosopher, says, perhaps when we think about all this, we shouldn't begin with abstract thoughts, right? We shouldn't begin asking the typical theoretical ethical question from above, which principle should I apply to the universe? Maximization of welfare, right? What duties can we universalize? Perhaps we should, as David Abram says, an American ecologist and philosopher, begin with our experience of being beings in the world. Perhaps, as M.Th. suggested, we should develop an understanding of ourselves as ecological selves and not just individual selves. And all that, from my point of view, leads from the anthropocentric view of Western culture into a much more ecocentric view of the role of humans. One problem here is because I work at a department of food and resource economics, so there's a lot of people with economic background hired there, and they always go, when I talk about this, because they say very beautiful, make it very naive, because we are rational, selfish beings. That's their anthropology, right? We are rational, selfish beings. And this ecocentrism might be beautiful, but extremely naive, right? And I have to admit that the empirical evidence point in that direction, because environmental policy since the Stockholm Declaration in 1970 points to that, right? We have come up with ecological modernization, which is basically saying we will only act on all this when it's beneficial for the economic system, right? And humans are all that matters. But is it true? Is the anthropology of economy correct, right? Are we rational, selfish beings? Or is that who we have become because that's the stories we have told? And when I turn to Aristotle, one of my philosophical heroes and virtue ethics, I actually see another picture of humans that says we can become rational, selfish beings, but we can become something different as well, if that is who we strive to become. Or as Kurt Vonnegut, American writer, said it, we are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful what we pretend to be. So what should we pretend to be? And here I turn to Walt Whitman and recently Bob Dylan, and pretend to be a multitude. Because being a part of sort of being in general that is special, because we are special, because we have rationality, right? We can understand to some extent the consequences of our actions, and we have free will. To some extent, we can decide whether we want to do something or not, right? But that doesn't make us less being part of the greater whole, right? So before there is this I in front of you, about 2 meters tall, 100 kilo, I stop here where my flesh ends, there's a distance, then you begin over there. There's an us, and I can demonstrate this us very easily because you can just take a deep breath right now. And even if you didn't because you felt nervous, what will happen? Are we going to do yoga or something, right? You have to breathe today while you're here, right? And when you breathe, something that was just inside of me will go inside of you. Right? This is how close we are with each other and with the rest of the universe. So I am not only me, I am also rock, water, tree, and animal. And it's from that vantage point I have to answer what my role is in sustaining us. This shift in self-understanding, from my point of view, would lead to a shift in understanding of the good life as being a life where I take care for the planet. I will be in a love affair with the biosphere. I have agreed this with my wife already. And it will move my motivation for doing something from duty, which obviously don't work, into inclination, right? I want to be in a love affair. And living entangled in a modern human community and caring for this community, from my vantage point, leads to a good life, no matter what happens long term, because I can worry about 2160 as well. And I can worry about tomorrow and the future of my children, but I live today. And I actually think that hope is not something that we should put into the future. Right? I think hope is that we can live lives today that are meaningful, and then we can see how far we can come. So finding out that we are not only humans, but part of this biosphere in this way, my hope is that this will help us us the unbearably privileged to act on our knowledge and align our actions with our words to some extent. It will help us maintain our sanity while witnessing an ecocide, and perhaps even live a meaningful life with glimpses of joy in it. And that is, as far as I know, all one can ask for. And yes, I know that this is rather bleak, and I could have spoken hopefully about technological solutions, but I'm not a scientist. I'm a theologian, a philosopher, and this is what happens when you do philosophy. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Actually, you didn't use up all of your time.
Oh.
So maybe we will take the opportunity. We have about 5 minutes until the scheduled coffee break. So we have a chance for a couple of questions from the audience. Yeah, already I see 2 hands up. They were absolutely simultaneous. So, yeah, okay, so I will go by you first.
Thank you for your talk. I think very inspiring. I think, because I share all of your opinions and values, but I'm usually met with sort of a very practical, maybe, argument that if you care about your social situation, if you don't have food, or if you have a troublesome childhood and you have problems, relational problems and things that occupy your mind, caring about nature is the last thing you'll do. I don't think the opposite, but some people do. What's your thought about that?
Well, obviously there are people in this world who are so stressed on their physical needs, right? So what's on their mind is the next meal, the next place to sleep. And we can't expect them to begin building deeper relationships with nature, right? But that doesn't mean we don't have to do it, right? It's like, it's not so that, oh, there's a problem in the universe, then we can't do anything, right? That's just a call for us to help them get out of that situation and enable to be in this situation where we are, where we can do it. The other thing about having troubles in your relationships, I've been married a couple of times. It's not so that when I'm in trouble in my marriage, I can't sort of take care of my friends. And especially my friends can take care of me, right? So being in a relationship with nature is not sort of, oh, but you can do that in your spare time when everything else is fixed, right? Nature is a place to go when my wife is mad at me, right? It's a place to find comfort. Right? And eventually I have to go home, I know, because I live in Denmark, it's too wet to be in the forest all the time. But it's not sort of mutually excluding, right? And actually, I think that one of the places to be and to find comfort in a situation where I very often feel so hopeless that I just lie under a table in a fetal position, right? It is to go into the woods, to the beach. Well, I live in Denmark, so not the mountains, but we have small hills, right? And climb them and find community and comfort, especially comfort in knowing I'm not that important, right? And we're not that important. And find what I usually call the comfort of the geologist, right? That in a million years, everything will be forgotten, right? Planet will carry on, life will carry on, but we are really fucking enough for ourselves right now, and the species that share the present moment in time and space with us.
So thank you very much for your very inspiring talk. And I'm coming from the very small village in the southern part of Lapland in Finland. And I have all the time the feeling I'm part of the nature and environment. And so, but the idea or thinking about the meat eating, because my family, we have been hunting all the years. My grandfather were in Russian side hunting bears and mooses and other things. And so that my family members, we have a lot of mooses in nearby. And I think that it's also a very good thing to hunt them, because they are danger for the travelers by the road and everything like that. But we have done that forever. And I think that I have eaten at least not 100 mooses, but And I continue that. And one part of our family, which has been doing generations, is the fishing. And I'm a fishing lady, but my sister, she is a hunting lady. So that we are doing that, I don't feel that bad, because it's, how I could say, it's a balance between the nature and between the things, so that we don't take more. We take only that what we need. And it is legal. We don't do that in a secret way. But that was only a comment in that. Yeah. And I think that is also the issue when you are living or coming from the big cities or different regions or something like that. But it took me at least 10 or 15 years to understand this, that people are going to the forest, but I'm one part of the forest. And that's a different word when I'm using it in Finnish. So thank you very much for your talk.
Yeah. But just to say, if we talk about sort of sustenance hunting and sort of, let's say, cultures living actually closer to nature than the typical Western urban environment and so on, that hunting and fishing there is a very interesting discussion, and I would like to take that, but not now. But from an ecological point of view, it's not a problem, right? What I'm talking about is industrial farming, as 99% of us is what we eat, right? And what is served when we go around, and what is in the cake you ate yesterday out here, and the milk that will be for the coffee and so on. That is animal production, which we could actually stop if we stop eating it, right? And then there's the sort of, where we can say that from an ecological perspective, it can actually be a very good thing. Then we can talk about animal ethics and how you should relate to other sentient beings, but that's another discussion. If we could just start by stopping industrial farming, right? I will be happy to allow you to continue eating moose. And then when we stopped industrial farming, I will come after you and glue myself to a moose. But that's going to take some years to stop industrial farming, so for now we can live in peace.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you very much again, Mickey.